Meow, 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 meow.
Stars lost in the fever dream, living in abandoned house, closet light, getting out of it. In my sleep I dream about once more. Getting out of it, I don't feel, I don't feel, I don't feel, getting out of sleep once more. I don't feel, I don't feel, I don't feel, I don't feel getting out of it, getting out of it, getting out of sleep and watch the world of
Hello everyone, the ones here. Normally people would quiz deleting it increases there for good measures because why not? This will be the foundation of our grassy paradise. Now with our plane selected, let's unleash the power of one of the most underrated features of Blender, hair. Hit Shift A, go to curve section and click empty hair. Open Geometry Nodes tab and you will see that one node appears.
Why is there a mirror modifier? What the fuck? I don't need that. Oh, so different. Oh wait, oh we want, oh god. We do want that mirror modifier because that's really where it is. Um
appear automatically. The deform curves on surface node. This little guy ensures that the hair sticks to the geometry even after we deform the mesh. But right now our plane is pretty much bald, so we're gonna add another node called generated hair curves. This nifty node
generate
group came from the team behind Blender because they want to make hair curves easier to use. Plug the curve into the output and grab that eyedropper to select our plane. And you can crank up the density using this parameter. Now currently our grass doesn't show any thickness, so first go into the render properties because we want to make hair curves easier to use. Plug the curve into the output and grab that eyedropper.
hang on. Hi. Sorry, I'm like choking on nothing. Goddamn.
To select our plane, and you can crank up the density using this parameter. Now currently our grass doesn't show any thickness, so first go into the render properties and set the curve shape to strip. Then grab
I think we have to apply the subdivision modifier. Why isn't it working? God damn.
a set using put in behind Blender because we want to make hair curves easier to use. Plug the curve into the output and grab that eyedropper to select our plane. And you can crank up the density using this parameter.
I was able to get it working before. Like, what the signal? Wait, let's look at the planet different one. Um, what? Uh, generate. Oops. Uh, there you go. There we go.
Now currently our grass doesn't show any thickness, so first go into the render properties and set the curve shape to strip.
Render properties. Curves to strip. Already did that.
Then grab a set curve radius node and put it here. Then adjust this value while pressing
Set curve. Caps lock on.
Shift for finer controls. And
Wait, there's an issue. No, um, um,
now we've got some basic grass growing on our plane.
is Alt C enabled? It is. I was wondering why you do it. It's like constant. So can we increase the density? Like maybe like 25? 20? Or maybe 15? I don't know, it doesn't need to be that much.
Plane. Now one important thing to remember, the grass and the plane are separate objects. The grass is automatically parented to the plane, meaning that you can move the plane around and your grass will follow along. We've got the grass set up, but it looks pretty much bland. But don't worry, the real magic is about to begin. For those who are new to geometry nodes, it's basically a non-destructive way to manipulate your mesh. Think of it like giving your model superpowers with the power of nodes. Unfortunately, most of it is just math. Don't worry if math isn't your best friend. Well, I'm also not good at math too, which made me highly qualified to teach math with some memes and visual elements. Now with some special nodes, we can tell Blender to manipulate these points individually. In this case, we want to control how each blade of grass sways in the breeze. And to achieve this, we need to control the rotation of each point based on the one before it, essentially using the previous point as a pivot. we'll use a node called offset point in curve, which can give us the reference of a point along the grass. This lets us reference the previous point, acting as the center of rotation. Now if there isn't a previous point, then we need to default it to the current point using the switch node set to integer and add an index node. Now we'll use an evaluate and index node set to vector and grab the
Oh
position
my god, wait, slow down.
to the current point using the switch node set to integer and add an index node. Now we'll use an evaluate and index node set to vector and grab the position node and plug it like this to get the position of the previous point. And then add a vector math node set to subtract and plug the current position and the previous point position like this. Now we have the arrow that we can use to do the rotation, but before that we have to accumulate the field using
Oh my god, slow down. Ah! I keep getting the wrong index node.
We'll use an evaluate and index node set to vector and grab the position node and plug it like this to get the position of the previous point. And then add a vector math node set to subtract and plug the current position and the previous vector and grab the position
Should give ourselves more room. In my hand.
node and plug it like this to get the position of the previous point. And then add a vector math node set to subtract and plug the current position and the previous point position like this. Now we have the arrow that we can use to do the position and the previous point
Dude, I hate my mouse. Thank God my new mouse is getting a new one. Sorry, I'm not explaining myself well. Thank goodness that I'm getting a new mouse today.
position like this. Now we have the arrow that we can use to do the rotation, but before that we have to accumulate the field using the accumulate field node. And also be sure to set it to vector too. Imagine it's like stacking those arrows belonging to each control point on top of each other. Now with a set position node, put it over here and plug the leading output into the position input. And then we can see that our graph stacks up like this, put over each other. Now with a set position node, put it over here and plug the leading output into the position input. And then we can see that our graph stacks up like this. It's because the accumulate field node, we initially gave every blade of grass the same ID. To fix this, we'll use the index node and the evaluate on domain node.
Interesting.
Put into the position input. And then we can see that our graph stacks up like this. It's because the accumulate field node, we initially gave every blade of grass the same ID. To fix this, we'll use the index node and the evaluate on domain node set to spline and plug them like this to give each grass blade a unique ID.
It keeps clicking. Dude, that's insane.
D. To fix this, we'll use the index node and the evaluate on domain node set to spline and plug them like this to give each grass blade a unique ID. Now everything is at the center, so we can add the curve root node, plug the root position to the offset of the set position node, and now our grass is back to its original position. Then finally, we can add a vector rotate node here, set this to Euler, and now we can rotate the grass in any direction we want. Ooh, that's the then final node, and now the root node, plug the root position, now spline, and plug them like this to give each grass blade a unique ID. Now everything is at the center, so we can add the curved root node, plug the root position,
Curve root.
to the offset of the set position node, and now our grass is back to its original position. Then finally, we can add a vector rotate node here, position to the offset of the set position node, and now our grass is back to its original position. Then finally, we can add the curved root node, plug the root position to the offset of the set position node, and now our grass
Interesting. Oh, because we have planet in one. These are the curves. I'm just gonna real quick. This position.
grass is back to its original position. Then finally, we can add a vector rotate node here, set this to Euler, and now we can rotate the grass in any direction we want. Ooh, that's the initial setup, and next we will create a virtual wind. But before that, here's a few words of advice. It might seem complex now, but trust me, the more you play with geometry nodes, the more it will become second nature, and you'll look back and say, wow, how did I ever struggle with this? Just keep practicing, and soon you'll be a grass professional.
Hello. Sorry, I missed your message, I think. I was just focusing on the tutorial. Is this turning out decent? How does it look in material? Oh. I think we need to get the set camera, whatever.
Now let's get this grass swaying in the breeze. We can use a node called align outlet to vector to control the rotation of each grass blade. Think of it like pointing a finger in a direction. Blender will automatically calculate the rotation for that direction. Set the align mode to Z-axis, and for the input vector, we'll use 1, 0, 0. This makes
Hmm. What does that mean? Under. Oh, wait, how did I do it before? Um, oh, interesting.
All the blades face the x-axis, but hey, real grass isn't that uniform, right? The blades face the x-axis, we'll use 1, 0, 0 in a direction. Blender will automatically calculate the rotation for that direction. Set the align mode to z-axis, and for the input vector, we'll use 1, 0, 0. This makes all the blades face the x-axis, but hey, real grass isn't that uniform, right? The tip should bend more than the roots, and here's where things get cool. We'll grab a mix node, set it to rotation, then we'll plug this into the B socket. We'll grab the spline parameter nodes, which generates this nice gradient. On the root, mix node, set it to rotation, then we'll plug this into the B socket.
Oh, I don't wanna raw. Um,
We'll grab the spline parameter nodes, which generates this nice gradient. On the root, we want no rotation. Spline parameter nodes, which generates this nice gradient. We'll grab the spline parameter nodes,
line. What? Parameter?
which generates this nice gradient. On the root, we want no rotation, and on the tip, we want the full effect of the rotation. Plug this to the mix node, and now you can see the sweet bend, but our grass is pretty stiff. So let's add randomness to it using the ever popular noise texture node. Turn off normalize, scale it down to 0.5
Noise texture.
and set the detail to 0. This creates a subtle, natural level of randomness. Then we'll use two math nodes, set one to multiply and another to multiply add, then connect them like this. Now for the grand finale, let's animate the grass. And set noise texture node. Turn off normalize, scale it down to 0.5 and set the detail to 0. This creates a subtle, natural level of randomness. Then we'll use two math nodes, set one to multiply and another to multiply add, then connect them like this. Now for the grand finale, let's animate the grass. To do this, we'll use two math nodes, set one to multiply and another to multiply add, then connect them like this.
Um, do, do, do. Not mean to do that.
Now for the grand finale, let's animate the grass. To do this, we'll animate the vector used by the noise texture node. We'll use a combination of nodes like curves root, vector math, scene time, and combine xyz node to create a setup that increases the x value over time. And now you can hit nodes like curves root, vector math, scene time, and combine xyz node to create a setup that increases the x value over time. And now you can hit play. You setup and increases the x value over
Fine, XYZ. Time. X. Vector. Root position. Did that not do it? Yeah. Oh, that did do it. And then we can probably decrease the density. Um, Maybe it ought to be. I don't know. It's like too large.
time. And now you can hit play. Your grass is now swaying gently in the breeze. It might seem a little bit slow, so let's crank it up using a multiplier node set to -5, then plug it over here. And now we got some nice looking wind. But wait, there's more. We can add even more randomness to the rotation using the rotate rotation and another to the rotation node. This lets us use the color generated by the noise texture to add some extra wobble to each grass blade. Plug them like this.
Yeah. Oh god. Lagging so much.
Even more, so let's crank it up using a multiply node set to -5, then plug it over here. And now we got some nice looking wind. But wait, there's more. We can add even more randomness to the rotation using the rotate rotation and another to the rotation node. This lets us use the color generated by the noise texture to add some extra wobble node. This lets us using the rotate rotation and another to the rotation
Rotate. Rotation. Euler rotation.
node. This lets us use the color generated by the noise texture to add some extra wobble to each grass blade.
Yeah, I cannot believe this loss.
Plug the color generated by the noise texture to add some extra wobble to each grass blade. Plug them like this to each grass blade. Plug them like this. Generated by the noise texture to add some extra wobble to each grass blade. Plug them like this. a wobble to each grass blade. Plug them like this.
Okay. Scalar to rotation. Let's see. What? That's not what I want. Um, vector rotate.
And now, that's some seriously dynamic grass. And to add more controls, we can duplicate this mix nodes which we used earlier and place it over here. This lets us adjust the strength of our noise texture, giving the ultimate control over the amount of randomness in your grass.
Yeah.
And now, that's some seriously dynamic grass. And to add more controls, we can duplicate this mix nodes which we used earlier and place it over here. This lets us adjust the strength of our noise texture, giving the ultimate control over the amount of randomness in your grass. So, how is that? You've gone from a bald
I don't know if I
plane
like
to
that. Let's see if we can.
and an outlier to the rotation node. This lets us use the color generated by the noise texture to add some extra wobble to each grass blade. Plug them like this.
Okay, so the noise texture goes into the factor. Yes. So what used to go into the vector math, yeah, that is that should be correct. Scalar rotation.
And now, that's some seriously dynamic grass. And to add more controls, we can duplicate this mix nodes which we used earlier and place it over here.
Like, oh, hi, how do you end your stream? Sorry, I was so focused on the tutorial that I did not see your chat. I end my stream by clicking the end stream button, I guess. I don't know. That might have not answered your question. I'm sorry.
This lets us adjust the strength of our noise texture, giving the ultimate control.
Around in my brain and blood beneath that skin. Wonder if this body is real. No one can prove my existence, but lost water. Okay. Um.
control over the amount of randomness in your grass. So, how is that? You've gone from a bald plane to a mini ecosystem with the power of geometry nodes. Alright, we are now almost at the end. Let's make the grass look a little less plastic and make it more like grass. We've come a long way, but shading is key. Don't worry, because it's almost too easy. First thing first, let's jump into the shader editor and create a brand new shader for our grass. We'll head back to geometry nodes and assign this new shader over here. Back in the shader editor, we'll make a simple toon shader. Grab a diffuse BSDF, shader to RGB, a mix node, a color ramp. Back in the shader editor, we'll head back to geometry nodes and assign this new shader over here. Back in the shader editor, we'll make a simple toon shader. Grab a diffuse BSDF, shader to RGB, a mix node, a color ramp, and a noise texture. Now set the scale to 0.3 and I will use this normal node to replace the grass original normals.
Okay. Look.
Grass set the scale to 0.5, shader to RGB, a mix node, a color ramp, and a noise texture.
Noise texture. Color ramp. Diffuse. Shader to RGB. Mix. Mix.
Now set the scale to 0.3 and I will use this normal node to replace the grass original normals.
Normal.
Check the video description for the color codes. And in the material properties, set the shadow mode to none. This means that our grass won't cast any shadow, but it can check the video description.
Normal. Hi, how are you? Hey, hi, how are you? Hey, how are you today? Though I could be better, I think the weather is quite nice today. Hi, how are you? Hey, hi, how are you? How are you today? Oh, I can get that. It's quite nice today. Uh, he touched me, touched me. That works. Yes, that works. I like the point one. Yeah, yeah.
And for the color codes. And in the material properties, set the shadow mode to none. This means that our grass won't cast any shadow,
Uh,
but it can set the shadow mode to none.
uh-oh. I don't see that. Oh, settings. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Blender 5.1. The mode material. Um, properties. Um, okay.
This means that our grass won't cast any shadow, but it can still receive them from other objects, creating a more stylized view. Now select the light and change it to sunlight, and reduce the strength to 10. Next, let's head into the world shader and reduce the strength. Now select the light and change it to sunlight, and reduce the strength to
Can't I make this bigger? I guess I can just put a point. Uh, how to make an object emit light blender. And let them meet that can wonder if it's problems. I can just add a light. Light. Yeah. Okay. And then 1000. Um, ten thousand. I like that. Oh my god, that is so simply phasing, like genuinely. That is awesome. Not like a more scale. Okay, cool. Um,
to 10. Next, let's head into the world shader and set the environment to black to remove all the effects it had on our grass shadow. Alternatively, you can use this background shader setup if you want to set the background color without affecting other shaders. Finally, in the render properties, under color management, set the wheel transform to standard to ensure our colors display correctly. And that's pretty much it. Now this next part is optional, but if you want to make the grass a little bit more stunning, here's an optional bonus step. We use the geometry node to store some data about our grass, then we can use that in the shader. We'll grab a store name attribute node and use it to store the output of the multiply add node. Allies at the same time. Well, congratulations on the multiply add shit. Now this next part is optional, but if you want to make the grass a little bit more stunning, here's an optional bonus step. We use the geometry node to store some data about our grass, then we can use that in the shader. We'll grab a store name attribute node and use it to
wait, I'm so sorry. This is like the
optional
second
bonus
time.
step. We use the geometry node to store some data about our grass, then we can use that in the shader. We'll grab a store name attribute node and use it to store the output of the multiply add node, located
Stored named attribute. Hi, how are you? Hey, hi, how are you? Hey, how are you today? Hi, how are you? Hey, hi, how are you? Hey, how are you today? So I could be better, I think the weather is quite nice today.
after the noise texture. This data will represent the wind affecting our blade. Then we'll add another attribute to store our random data will store the output of the multiply add node. Located after the noise texture. This data will represent the wind affecting our blade. Then we'll add another attribute to store a random value of each grass blade. Set this to spline and add the random value node. Make sure that both of these affecting our blade. Then we'll add another attribute to store a random value of each grass blade. Set this to spline and add the random value node. Make sure that both of these is set to vector and set the minimum values to -1. Then plug this at the end of the geometry the minimum random value node. Make sure that both of these is set to vector and set the minimum values to -1. Then plug this at the end of the geometry node. Back in the shader, we'll use the attribute node to get the wind data. Then we'll use this at the end and add the random value node. Make sure that both of these is set to vector and set the minimum values to -1. Then plug this at the end of the geometry node. Back in the shader, we'll use the attribute node to get the wind data. Then we'll use the map range node to node. Back in the shader, we'll use the attribute node to get the wind data. Then we'll use the map range node to modify the data a little bit. Then we'll mix that with the original color of our graph. Here, we'll use the attribute node to get the wind data. Then we'll use the map range node to modify the data a little bit. Then we'll mix that with the original color of our grass. And now, our grass has a pleasing wind effect. We'll do the same with the random attribute, add a hue saturation value node and a separate range node to modify the data a little bit. Then we'll mix that with the original color of our grass. And now, our grass has a pleasing wind effect. Then we'll use the map range node to modify the data a little bit. Then we'll mix that with the original color of our graph to modify the data a little bit. Then we'll mix that with the original color of our grass. And now, our grass has a pleasing wind effect. We'll do the same with the random attribute, add a hue saturation value node and a separate XYZ node here. Reduce the factor and plug them together like this. And now we have some variation, making each blade ever so slightly different. And there you have it. You have created some awesome looking grass in Blender that reacts together like this. And now we have some variation, making each blade ever so slightly different them together like this. And now we have XYZ.
Yeah. I am back.
Node here.
Oh.
Reduce the factor. And plug them together like this. And now we have some variation, making each blade ever so slightly different. And there you have it. You have created some awesome looking grass in Blender that reacts to light sources, making it look super realistic and stylized at the same time. Well, congratulations! If you have any questions, put them in the comments below. And before you go, check that subscribe button. It might just turn into a rainbow if you haven't subscribed yet. Stay tuned for the next part. Big thanks to all my amazing Patreon supporters. Now it's your turn to go further and beyond and create some incredible grass scenes. Stay positive and happily blending.
Happy blending. Happy blending.
And, and one of the hardest thing to do is to make stylized looking grass like this. The crazy thing is, you can easily make this using geometry nodes. Now, initially for some people, geometry node may seem scary. It's possible to create an overly complex geometry node setup for this job, which means it's also possible for it to become too complex that it may not abide with the law of physics in the simulation in which we lived. In other words, it's God's will that our nodes shall not work. Luckily, that is not the case in this video. I have combined what we have done in part 1 into these simple node groups, which means you don't have to watch part 1 and get started right away. But if you want more detail on how it works, then you know where to go to. Now if you haven't done it yet, go ahead and download and open the file in the description. Let's right click on the viewport border and split the window, and we will change this to geometry nodes. If you select the grass, you'll see the node groups from part 1 here, but the question is, what do we do next? We want something like this, which looks very complex.
Oh, hi.
We're gonna use a technique that
Sorry, I was eating. And also, why are you saying my bad? It's literally fine.
many AAA games like Breath of Wild and Genshin Impact use. It's called grass card or grass billboards. It's basically the same thing you see in Minecraft, but now we're gonna make it face the camera always. So we need to do two things. First, convert the grass to measures like this and make it face the camera. And second, we will store some UV coordinate data which we can use to put a texture on it. We already got these curves from part 1, but how do we make them into cards? When you think of it, Curve doesn't actually exist. When you click render, nothing appears because curve lines are infinitely thin, unless you change the settings which will convert the curve to mesh behind the scene. In geometry node is super simple. You can just replace these nodes with the curve to mesh node, and now
What? Wait, what? What? Delete that? Delete the work I just made in the last tutorial? I don't understand. Dude, I'm actually so pissed right now. I was gonna go get ice cream for my birthday tomorrow, right? But now I can't do it. That always has things, make things about him. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't have the full context, so I don't know like what prevents you from doing that. But that does really suck. I'm sorry.
you have success. You can just replace these nodes with the curve to mesh node, and now you have successfully converted every curve to mesh. But now you see these thin strands and the vertex count that jumps from 1000 up to 200,000 vertices, which is totally unacceptable. I'm sure some of you will use this in an animation, and to not shoot yourself in the foot, we need to add a resample curve node which can
It's someone trying to out. Oh, yeah, that's unfortunate. I don't know. Can you like get your own transportation, like taking the bus or something? I mean, oh, hello. My afternoon is good. Um, I made the thing on screen right now. I'm really proud of it. I mean, I've already made it before, but I remade it and it looks better. Oh, I mean, at that point, I just wouldn't ask him. Um, or just lie about asking him. Oh, I'm sorry. That really sucks. Legitimately. It's like transportation should be more universal like that.
reduce the number of vertices that we are generating. Just grab one of them and put it here. Then
Oh my god, I hate this mouse. I hate this mouse! Ah! Ah! And I'm also going to the softball game that night, and I asked if you could take video then. Oh, yeah. It seems just very inconsiderate. Um, I'm sorry. Oh shit. What did that do? I just hope that like once you're independent, you won't have to deal with this kind of thing anymore. Like that should be how it works.
And reduce this number to something like 4 for now, to make sure Blender doesn't destroy our computer in the future. Fun fact! I destroyed my first laptop because I used Blender too much. Back then there was only Cycle's rendering engine, which means real-time rendering wasn't even a thing in Blender yet. And most notably, it still had that blinding white theme by default. My laptop overheated a couple of times before it decided to destroy itself, which makes me really sad.
Okay. I appreciate your acceptance of the fact. Anyway.
So, if you want to pat my head or buy me a boba tea, you can now support me on Patreon. And you will also gain access to these scenes and assets I made over a couple of months. Your support has always been amazing, and you are the reason I'm able to turn my hobby into a side hustle. Now with that out of the way, let's get back to Geometry Node. The Curve to Mesh node also had this profile curve input, which allows us to use another curve profile for our generated mesh. A circle profile
Oh, that's interesting.
profile will generate a mesh like this, because all it's doing is extruding the circle along the curved path. In this case, we want to use a curved line as the profile. Change the start and end points to negative 0.5, 0, 0, and 0.5.
What? Sorry. I'm honestly so bored. I don't know what I should do. Debating on making masks, or drawing, and playing again. Um, I mean, I always find enjoyment in making art, but I don't know if that's the same for you, so you don't have to necessarily follow what I say, but like I would recommend just like drawing. It's like what gives you enjoyment, you know? Hello, Hem Palace.
In this case, we want to use a curved
A mix of both? Okay, sure.
line as the profile. Change the start and end points to negative 0.5, 0, 0, and 0.5, 0, 0 to create a line like this. Then plug this curve to our curve profile, and now you see this mesh over here. On our grass
Oh.
generator, let's put the radius to 1 and reduce the density. And congratulations, you have
Um,
finally made the radius to 1 and reduce the density. And congratulations on our grass our curve profile, and now you
for
see
the point negative 0.5, 0, 0.5, and two profile curves. Oh, is this in the same direction? Oh, we need to put the camera in, yes. Um, how's your art coming through? Yeah, it's you know, let me just add a camera. It's pretty. I'm really proud of what I'm making right now. I just want to make more art. You know, it's like I should be sketching more. I should be working on my projects more. And so, yeah, I'm gonna make some changes to kind of like my habitual, um, sorry, yeah. I don't see the shading though. What's up with that? That's okay. Bye. Don't overwork though. It sucks because I did it yesterday and slept till 1 in the afternoon. Oh yeah, I empathize. It's like I can very easily do the same, and so I know what it's I know I know the circumstances that can kind of lead to that situation very well.
This mesh over here. On our grass generator, let's put the radius to 1 and reduce the density, and
Radius. Oh, it's that's pretty good. It animate though. Does. Uh, I have a horrible sleep schedule. I used to too. I've struggled with sleep a lot throughout my life. So like I really do empathize with that.
congratulations, you have finally made grass cards. When you try to play the animation, the grass will wobble around like before. And now it's time we make them face the camera. In order to do that, we have to modify the curve normals. We can simply add the set curve normal node, put it before the curve to mesh node, and now we
uh, set curve normal. Put it before the what? The resample curve? That two, three.
can offset the normals of our grass cards, but how do we make them all face the camera? And to tell that effectively, I need to bring you back many years ago in a story that I just made up. When Nomos was the king of the 3D kingdom, he can determine the shading based on whichever way he faces. Sometimes he faces the dark, leaving all the citizens scared. Other time he faces the light, which makes everyone happy. But the thing is, he's hard to control. But then one day, a bandits group called NPR Artists came and said we are going to control the normals. They made tools like the abnormal add-on and many other tools to edit the normals. The set curve normal was one of them. We can set the normal free by setting this to free. The only thing is, which direction do we forcibly place the normals? We can get that by using this setup, which consists of active
That's a lot of sun. But okay, I will active camera position object info subtract vector math or tangent cross product.
Camera node, object info, vector map node set to subtract and cross product, the position node, and the curve tangent node. And now you can plug the new direction to the set curve normal. And you can see now that the cars face the camera. We can confirm this by going into the camera view by pressing this icon over here.
Material preview. Yes. Okay, this is turning out awesome. I don't think I want to do a more.
Then press this lock button to lock the camera to view. And as we move around the camera, you can see that the grass faces the camera always. Now that was almost too easy. I was almost going to jump around in happiness, but then I realized that the grass was practicing boxing behind my back. When I played the animation, the grass was doing a ha movement like it's trying to punch the camera. This is because every curve is defined by the control points that we set before, and each point is grabbing information from itself, but that's not really what we want in this case, and to fix this, we need to learn the concept of sampling index. Every point in our scene has a unique identifier called index. It's like how our appearance and interests are different from each other, which makes us unique in our own ways, and that's why you are already perfect as you are. We are going to add the curve root node and evaluate.
I'm surprised how your lives don't get a lot of views or likes. I'm mostly one of the first people here, and I try to see a great live stream, and people just skip past it. Yeah, I mean, I kind of prefer it that way, because like if I got popular, then I wouldn't be able to have one-on-one conversations like this, you know? So like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Asleep, 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 asleep. Sorry. It's just like the closet, so cold, alone, 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 alone. Everything I've ever wanted was to be found, so I looked for you, so I looked
Add
for
index node,
you.
then plug them like this.
Da, da, da.
This is basically telling every control point to get the information from the root of the curve instead. So in short, the root control point is like, oh, I need to reference myself, okay. And
Man,
then
I've
other
tried making
points are
this
like,
staying up at
oh,
6 a.m. Oh,
I
I'm
need
sorry.
to.
I mean, if you need to, you can take a nap. Um, like, please don't feel the need to stop by my stream
Grab
when you can,
information from the root instead.
relax.
Hey root index, can I borrow your information? Oh, sure. Alright, thanks pal. And that's essentially how the evaluate at index node work. Now with that out of the way, we got more consistent wavy pattern. The only thing left for us to do is to put a texture on it. But before that, we must store the UV map data
Okay, I don't
somewhere.
want to put a texture on
UV
it though.
map basically determines how an image is displayed on our mesh. It's like for data. Data. Remember the story.
Yeah, I don't want to put a texture on it.
Oh, it's time for me to.
I think this is good as is. Also, where is my world? Where is transparency settings? Oh my god, this is amazing! Ah! I love Blender! I love Blender! It moved the light. We need to we need to make a new material. Uh, and let's look at the manga. So if I go to the image I'm looking for, chapter 47. Also I can play music now, yippee! Oh, Manga Dex is back. Oh my god, down for maintenance. Hello. Okay. I'll procedural wood texture render.
In this Blender tutorial, I'll show you how to create this procedural wood plank material. And after we create the procedural material, I'll show you how to join the material together into this custom node group so that you can control the look of the material. So we have the scale to change the size of the material, so you can change this depending on the size of your object. Then we have two different colors for the wood, so we have a lighter color, and then we also have a darker color. So if you want like a lighter wood, you could turn the darker color up, and you can see the wood looks quite a bit different. Then we have the noise scale 1, and then we also have noise scale 2, so that can really change the look of the wood. Then we have these really cool values here, these texture variations. So by changing these values, you can get lots of different wood variations. You can see that now looks like a completely different wood just by changing those two texture variations. Then we also have this noise detail here. This will just make the noise more or less detailed, so you could turn it down a little bit if you want. And then we have the Voronoi detail, and then also the Voronoi detail 2, so those can definitely change the look of the wood. Then we also have the knot scale, so this wood actually has some little knots, so you can make the knots of wood bigger or smaller. And then we have the knots darkness value, so if you want those knots to be less visible or more visible, you can just drag the knots darkness. Then we have the roughness. Alright, so I'll now show you the 3D setup if you want to set up the blend file the same way that I have. So I want to preview this material on a sphere, so I'll go to the add menu, and I'm going to add an icosphere, and then right behind me when you open up the add icosphere settings, right after you add the icosphere, I'll turn the subdivisions to 6 so it is nice and smooth and round, and then I'll scale this object way down to like a 0.1 so it's a better size using the real life scale in Blender. I'll press Ctrl A, and I'm going to apply the scale, so this is the default size of the object, and then I'll use the object context menu and shade that smooth. Let's also go to the add menu, and I'm going to add a cube because I want to actually preview this on a plank of wood. I'll also scale this down to a 0.1 and then press Ctrl A and apply the scale, and then I'll go into edit mode, and I'm just going to scale this down to the size of a plank of wood. I can also bring it over and kind of rotate it up like that. And then I want to add a little bevel to the edge of the wood, so I'll go to the add menu. I'm going to search for the bevel modifier, and we're just going to add a bevel modifier here on the modifiers, and we will turn the amount way down so it's much smaller, and let's turn the segments up to maybe like a 4. So we're just going to have a tiny little bevel on the edge of the wood, and then we'll use the object context menu and shade it smooth. Now it may be a little bit hard to see, but on the edges of the wood don't look super sharp, and so what I'm going to do is click on add modifier, and I'm going to search for the weighted normal. So I'll add the weighted normal modifier.
Hello. Alt C. How does that look? It looks a little small, so that's good. Um, I chose to come here because I made a promise that I would come to all the streams today. I really don't expect you to, like, please. I stream so often sometimes. I can stream for like 10 hours a day. And so like I really can't expect you to join every single stream. But I appreciate the sentiment, like Jimmy. A dream inside, a dream inside, a dream. Its meaning lies outside. I made it the past few I can handle more. I suppose, I mean, I'm not like doubting you. I just mean, like, I'm not doubting your ability. I more rather am just, I don't want to be, I don't want to be the reason you like overwork yourself either. Like in regards to like constantly joining every stream. Like just, join when you want to. And if you want to join all of them, please be my guest. I just, don't make any sacrifices. Uh, yeah, that's what I'm trying to convey.
Now you can see right down here, it's going to say that you need to enable the auto smooth. So use the object context menu and we're going to choose the shade auto smooth. So you can see before when it's set to shade smooth, you can kind of see it on the edges. It kind of looks a little bit smooth, which is a little bit weird kind of on those flat areas. You might be able to see it better in the reflections of the matte cap. But now if I shade auto smooth, it looks quite a bit more crisp and sharp. Then I also added some different area lights right here. So I added these two area lights. So this first one here, I kind of scaled it up and pointed it here on the back. And I set the power to 10 and I made it a slight yellow color. And then this one right over here, this is a more yellow color. And also I set the power to 10 and I kind of put this one behind the objects to give some nice lighting. And then I did also add an HDRI to get some realistic lighting and reflections. So if you go over here to the world properties, I added in this Machine Shop 02 1K HDRI. So this is a free HDRI from polyhaven.com. The link will be in the description if you'd like to download the same HDRI that I'm using. So once you download the HDRI, you can click on the yellow dot here next to color. You can choose environment texture and then click on the open button and open up the HDRI. And again, I downloaded the 1K version and the HDR version. And then also just to make it a little bit less bright, I turned the strength here down to a 0.7. And then also I added this camera here and I just pointed the camera at the objects. And if you select the camera and go to the camera settings, I turned the focal length to 90 because it just zooms the camera in a bit and makes everything look a bit more flat, and I like that better. And then just a couple other settings that I'm going to go over. I'm going to be using the Cycles rendering engine because I'm going for realism. And then also let's open up the film tab here, and I checked marked the transparent button just so that the background is transparent so you can't see it. And also here on the color management, if you open up the color management, I set the view transform to and then over there in the add-ons tab, if you go here to the search, you can search for the Node Wrangler and just check mark the Node Wrangler add-on so it's built into Blender, and I'll show you how to use it in the video. So we can close Blender's user preferences. All right, so then also make sure that you have the same wood plank material on both of these objects. So I'm gonna go to the add menu and I'm gonna start to search for a Vorno texture, and then using the feature of the Node Wrangler, you can Control Shift and select the Vorno texture to preview it. And also with the Vorno texture selected, I'm going to press Control T to use the texture coordinate.
How was your reading you did yesterday? Oh yeah, it turned out pretty good. I was really proud of the scene I wrote actually. I was like pretty surprised that I managed to like what am I trying to say? I don't know. I was happy with the result.
Nodes, and I want to use the object coordinates, so we'll put the object into the vector, and the object coordinates are going to place the texture on the object more evenly. And you can turn the Voronoi scale up so you can see it better. Now, because this is a little bit of a complex material, I want to keep my nodes nicely organized, so I'm going to
Is it lagging? Yeah.
click and drag to box select these two nodes here, and I'll press Ctrl J. Ctrl J will join them together into a frame, and then I can select the frame, and I can press F2 to add a label, and I can call this mapping. All right, so now we can change some of the
Did the character enjoy your cupcakes? I don't know why that message was held for a review as if it was inappropriate in any shape or form. But I mean, I would imagine my character would enjoy cupcakes that were made by you. Yeah. Um, I mean, that'd be pretty cool.
Voronoi texture settings. So I'm going to turn the scale to a 7. I also want to turn the detail to 0, and then I'll leave the other settings how they are. Now this doesn't really appear as though it's doing much, but what I'm going to do is add a noise texture here between the mapping and the Voronoi, and the noise texture is going to distort the placement of the Voronoi texture because it's going through the vector. So we'll go to the add menu and we're going to search for a noise texture, and let's put it here between the mapping and the Voronoi. So now it's going through the vector, so it's going to distort the placement of the Voronoi. So you can see now it looks kind of distorted. Let's change some of the settings of this noise. So I'm going to turn the scale to a 3.5. Let's also turn the detail to the max of 15.
Doctor is weird. It came out. I wasn't trying to make it sound like. Oh no, it did not. No, please don't worry. It was YouTube that made it. Like YouTube. I don't know what what algorithm or artificial like. I don't know how it works, but it's just that like it detected something, probably like a maybe even a glitch or an error, but it did not. You did not give me that impression whatsoever. Don't worry.
Roughness here, I'll turn to like a 0.8. And then also this distortion here, I'll turn that to 4, so that looks more distorted. Let's also turn the detail to the max of 15, and the roughness here, I'll turn to like a 0.8. And then also this distortion here, I'll turn that to 4, so that looks more distorted. Now I want to stretch out the wood texture to make it actually look more like wood. So I'm going to go to the add menu and I'm going to search for another mapping node. And we'll put this mapping node after the first one. So now this mapping node, because it's going into the vector, it's going to change the placement of the textures. So we can, for instance, rotate or move or scale the textures. So I'm going to scale the texture to kind of stretch it out to make it look like wood. So on the scale X here, I'm going to turn this to a 5.5. And on the Y here, I'm going to turn this to a 0.45. And then I'll leave the Z at 1. So you can now see it looks like the texture is.
I keep getting misgendered by people at school. Oh, I'm sorry. What are your pronouns? If you can just remind me so that I make sure I don't do the same thing. I want to be a person who a source of what am I trying to describe? I don't want to make the same mistake. And I think I already, because I checked your channel the other day, and like I think I already know your pronouns, but I just want to hear it from you, so that I can, make sure. Does that make sense? Okay, yeah, okay, good. Because your channel, I think it said, what did it say? Or I think I remember it's saying like pretty much all of the standard pronouns. So like the fact that, okay, he, that. It's in my mind. Thank you for clarifying.
Stretched. And then also one other thing that I want to do is I want to use the factor value instead of the color. So I'll put the factor into the vector. All right, now I want to have two different wood textures and we'll mix them together to make it more interesting and give more detail. So I'm going to hold down the shift key and select both of these textures, and I'll press Control Shift D. So Control Shift D will duplicate the nodes, but it's going to keep the wires plugged up so they're both plugged into the mapping. And let's Control Shift and select this Voronoi texture to preview it, and I can change some of the settings. So I'll turn the scale to a 6. In the detail, I'll turn up a little bit to like a 0.2, so it has a little bit of detail. All right, so then we can also change the noise settings. So on the settings, so Control Shift D will duplicate the nodes, but it's going to keep the wires plugged up so they're both plugged into the mapping. And let's Control Shift and select this Voronoi texture to preview it, and I can change some of the settings. So I'll turn the scale to a 6. In the detail, I'll turn up a little bit to like a 0.2, so it has a little bit of detail. All right, so then we can also change the noise settings. So on the scale here, I'll turn this to a 2.5 instead. And then I also want to turn this roughness down a bit to like a 0.45, so it has a bit less roughness. And then I'll leave these settings how they are. So you can see now we have kind of a larger wood texture. There's kind of some bigger spots and they're not quite as detailed. And then if I Control Shift and select this Voronoi texture, this one is kind of smaller and has more detail. So now you can see we have two different textures here, and I want to mix them together to make it look like a really interesting wood. So I'm going to go to the Add menu, and I'm going to search for the Mix Color node, because the Mix Color node can mix multiple colors together. So we'll drop the Mix Color node right here, and let's bring these over so I have a bit more space. So I can now take the Voronoi distance, and I can put that into color A, and then the other Voronoi distance, let's put that into color B. And I'll Control Shift and select the mix to preview it. Now the factor is going to change how much we're using of each one. So only color A or only color B. However, I don't just want to mix between them because I want to be able to see both of the textures that we're mixing together. So what we can do is change the mix type here to darken instead, and this way it's just going to add the dark values. So now as I turn the factor up, you're going to be able to see both of them. So you can see right now, it's just showing the top one. When the factor is 0, it's only using A, but then as I turn the factor up, it's going to use more and more of just the dark values from the bottom one. So now we have a really interesting wood texture. There's kind of some bigger details and some smaller details. So let's box select all these nodes. I'll
A dream inside, a dream inside, a dream, feeling lines aside. You must have dreamed it. Skyless sky. Hello.
press Ctrl J to join it together into a frame. If I select the frame and press F2 to give it a label, I'm going to call it wood texture because this is the base of the wood. Now I also want to create the knots. So we're going to create a different group right here of textures, which is going to be the knots. So I'm going to start off by going to the Add menu, and I'm going to search for a Voronoi texture. Let's place it here, and I can Control Shift and select the Voronoi to preview it. And we want to take this mapping vector, and we want to put that into the vector of the Voronoi. So again, it's using the object coordinates. Now this Voronoi here, if I turn the scale up, you can see there's going to be a bunch of little dots, and so we're going to use that to actually create the wood. So let's change some of the Voronoi texture settings. So on the F1 here, I want to change this to smooth F1 so the edges are much smoother. You can see that looks a lot better now. Let's turn the scale to just like a 16 because I don't want them to be too big. I don't want to be able to see too many of them. And the detail, I'll turn up a little bit to like a 0.5, but I don't want to turn up too high. And then I'll leave the other settings how they are. Now I want to make this Voronoi texture more contrasty so you can see the circles better. So I'll go to the Add menu, and we're going to search for a color ramp, and we'll put the color ramp after the Voronoi distance. And then we're going to drag these two values together, and by dragging them closer together, they'll be much more contrasty. So I'll just drag these two about here, so the black one there and the white one there, so you can see that a bit better. Now, these don't really look like wood knots right now because they don't really have any detail. So I'm going to be going to the add menu again, and I'm going to search for another noise texture. And we're going to put this noise texture here after the color ramp. So because the noise texture has lots of noise data, we're now putting the Voronoi into the vector of the noise, and so now it's distorting it. So now that looks more like wood knots because they have those little circles there and it's more detailed. Let's change some of the noise settings. So I'm going to turn this scale to like a 20, and I'll turn the detail to 15 so it's very detailed, and I'll leave the other settings how they are. Now right now it's distorting it way too much, so it just looks like a bunch of little rings, and so I want the Voronoi texture to have less of an effect over the noise texture. So to do this, I'm going to go to the add menu, and I'm going to search for the mix color, and we'll put the mix color after the color ramp, so just stick it right there. So now this mapping isn't distorted at all, but the Voronoi is very distorted. So what I'm going to do is hold down the shift key and right click and drag over this wire and let go, and this is just going to add a reroute. So we can now just take the reroute, and we're going to plug this here into color A of the mix. And then this color ramp color, that is going to go into color B. So now what this mix is doing is it's mixing between the original mapping, which isn't distorted, and this color ramp, which has these little dots. So we're mixing between them. So now I can drag this factor around, and you can see it's going to blend between them. Now what I want to do is take this mix here, and I'm going to change this to the linear light. So change it here to the linear light, and this color ramp, which has these little dots. So we're mixing
A dream inside, a dream inside, a dream lies outside. You must have dreamed
between them. So now I can drag this factor around, and you can see it's going to blend between them. Now what I want to do is take this mix here, and I'm going to change this to the linear light. So change it here to the linear light. Now I can control shift and select the noise texture, and so it's going to control how much it's distorting the noise. So if I turn the factor all the way down, you can see it just looks like control how much it's distorting the noise. So if I turn the factor all the way down, you can see it just looks like the noise. It isn't distorted, but then as I turn the factor up, it's going to be distorted more and more. However, it's just being distorted where those Voronoi dots are. So it's kind of adding those little rings. Now I want this to be a very, very small number, so I'm going to turn the factor to a 0.02. So now you can see it just looks distorted a little bit. It's kind of noisy there around those dots. So that's what we're going to use to create the knots in the wood. Now I want to make this more contrasty because it's pretty gray right now. So we'll take this color ramp, we'll press Shift D to duplicate it and drop it here after the noise. And then I can drag these values around just to make it more contrasty. So we'll drag the black tab to about here and the white tab to about you can see it's going to blend dots. So the original mapping, which isn't distorted, and this color ramp, which has these little dots. So
Oh shit.
we're mixing between them. So now I can drag this factor around, and you can see it's going to blend between them. Now what I want to do is take this mix here, and I'm going to change this to the linear light. So change it here to the linear light. Now I can control shift and select the noise texture, and so it's going to control how much it's distorting the noise. So if I turn the factor all the way down, you can see it just looks like the noise. It isn't distorted, but then as I turn the factor up, it's going to be distorted more and more. However, it's just being distorted where those Voronoi dots are. So it's kind of adding those little rings. Now I want this to be a very, very small number, so I'm going to turn the factor to a 0.02. So now you can see it just looks distorted a little bit. It's kind of noisy there around those dots. So that's what we're going to use to create the knots in the wood. Now I want to make this more contrasty because it's pretty gray right now. So we'll take this color ramp, we'll press Shift D to duplicate it and drop it here after the noise. And then I can drag these values around just to make it more contrasty. So we'll drag the black tab to about here and the white tab to about there. So now you can really see those knots a lot better. Now there's a problem with this, and that is that there's lots of little noise here, and I want to just be able to see the knots, but I don't want to be able to see all these little bits of noise. So what we're going to do is create a mask and basically mask out these other spots so we can just see where the knots are. So to do this, I can duplicate this color ramp again, and let's control shift and select the color ramp to preview it. And I'm going to take this first color ramp and we're going to put that into the factor. And then I can drag the white and black values around, and I'll put the black tab to about here and the white tab to about here. So now you can see that we're basically just making this color ramp more contrasty, so it's a bit bigger. So this color ramp here, we're going to use as the mask to tell it where we want to be able to see those knots. And we're just going to see the knots where the dark parts are. So I'll go to the add menu, and to mix them together, I'm going to search for another mix color, and we'll drop this here. And so we're going to plug the color ramp color into the factor, and then this bottom color ramp color, this one is actually the knots. The color is going to go into color A. And then right here on the mix type, let's change this again to the linear light, and let me just Control Shift and select it so we can preview it. So because this color ramp is going into the factor, this is determining what parts will be.
I'm gonna edit. I'm gonna sell drawings and self portraits right now. I might get mischievous, but I don't care. Oh, okay. I wish for your success with selling your art, because that's very cool that you get to do that. Yeah, keep it up.
Be color A and what parts will be color B. So now here in color B, we can just make this fully black. So basically, if I Control Shift and select the color ramp, wherever these black parts are, that's going to be the knots. But then wherever the white parts are, that is going to be this color here, which is color B. So now we're just seeing the knots, but we're not seeing the noise. So we're basically using this to just mask out wherever the noise is and just see the knots. So now what I want to do is zoom out here. I want to box select all these nodes. Press Ctrl J to join it together into a frame. I'll select the frame and press F2 to add a label, and I can call it knots. And then just to keep my nodes nicely organized, because this is getting a little bit large, it's kind of a bigger material, I'm just going to kind of compress these nodes. You can just do whatever works best for you. I'm just going to kind of compress these down. Let's box select these nodes and bring them back. And what I can actually do is just kind of drag these nodes out, just to make it look a bit more organized. So now we have kind of the wood texture here and the knots here. So now that we have both of these textures, we want to mix them together. So again, just like we did before, we can go to the add menu and we can search for a mix color to mix the different colors together. So now this top one here, this is going to go into the factor, and then we're going to take this darken here and we're going to put this into color A. And then let's Control Shift and select the mix. And here on the mix type, I just want to add the light values. So we're going to turn this to lighten. Now why I'm doing this is because I want to be able to control how visible the knots are. So you can see right now we're mixing them together. However, it's kind of hard to see the knots, but if I take color B and make it lighter or darker, that will allow you to see the knots better. So if color B is fully white, it's just going to add those lighter values. And so now you can see the knot. It is a little bit subtle, but you are able to see the knot. If I, however, turn it down, the knot is going to become invisible. So specifically, I'm going to go with a very light gray color. And if you want to use the same color that I'm using here in color B, you can go to the hex value and you can punch in E4, E4, E4. So the knots are just barely visible, but they are hard to see. And so I'm also going to be doing this so that I can control the visibility of the knots in the custom node group. Now to actually control the visibility, I can go to the add menu and I can search for a hue saturation value. So we're going to drop the hue saturation value between this linear light here and the lighten. Now the value here, this is going to make it lighter or darker. So you can see I can just now drag this value and you'll be able to see the knots better, or they'll become invisible. So we'll be using this later in the custom node group. So let's box select these two nodes. I'll join them together into a frame, and I can click on the frame and add a label, and I'll rename this to mix knots and wood just to keep my nodes nicely organized so I can kind of see what they're all doing. So we're using these two nodes to mix the knots and the wood together. All right, so let's now create the base color. So I'll go to the add menu, and I first want to make it more contrasty. So I'm going to add a color ramp, drop it here, because right now this wood texture is pretty gray. So to make it more contrasty, we can take the lighten result, and we can put that into the color ramp, and then we Control Shift and select the color ramp to preview it. So again, just like I talked about earlier, if we drag these two values together, they're going to be much more contrasty. So I'll drag the white tab kind of to about here, and I'll drag the black tab over to about here, so something like that. So now you can just see the wood texture, it's a little bit darker. So now I want to add the colors, and I want the colors to be customizable. So instead of just changing these two colors to make the color of the wood, I'm going to go to the add menu, and I'm going to search for the mix color. So we'll drop the mix color after the color.
Okay. I might have to end stream at some point, but of course, yeah. I'll see you then,
ramp,
hopefully.
and we can put the color here from the color ramp into the factor. So now these whiter and darker values will determine what parts are color A and what parts are color B. So for color A here, I'm going to make this kind of like a light tannish peachy color. And then for color B here, this is going to be kind of like an orangey color, and I'll make it darker so it looks more like wood. And if you want to use the exact same colors that I'm using, then here on color A, you can go to the hex value and you can punch in D39469. And then here in color B, you can go to the hex value and you can punch in 4A, 2C, 1E. So those are the colors that I'm using for the wood. And now you can really see those knots a bit better, and it really is starting to look like wood. So let's box select these nodes and we'll join them together into a frame, and I can add a label and I can just call this base color to keep the nodes nicely organized and so you can remember what they do. So let's take this mix result here and I can put that into the base color, and I can control shift and select the principled shader to preview it. We'll drag these over here. All right, so that is now going into the shader, so it actually is interacting with the light now. Now I also want to add a little bit of variation into the roughness so that some parts are a bit more shiny and other parts are a bit more rough. So to do this, we'll go to the add menu and I'm going to search for a color ramp so we can change the colors, and we'll take the light and result and I can put that into the factor. And then what I can do is take this color ramp color and I can put that into the roughness. So now if I drag these around, you can see that some parts are going to be more rough and other parts are going to be more shiny. Now I'm going to drag these two back here, and I do kind of like how the roughness is. However, I want everything to be a little bit more the same, and I want everything to be a bit more shiny. So on the black tab here, if I turn the black tab up, you can see it's going to be a bit more rough. So I'll just turn this to like a very, very dark black color, so something like that, so a very dark gray. But then this white color here, this color I'm going to make a bit darker so that everything is a bit more shiny. And if you want to use the same exact colors that I'm using, the black color is going to be a hex value of 161616, and the light color, this is going to be a hex value of EC, EC, EC. So later on the video, when we create the custom node group, I want to be able to actually control the roughness. So if we make the values lighter or darker, that'll change the roughness. So we can just go to the add menu and we can search for the hue saturation value, and we'll put this after the color ramp. And so now we have this value here, and the value is just going to make the entire thing lighter or darker. So if I turn it way down, you can see it's super reflective and it looks like a polished wood. So that's what we're going to use later in the custom node group. So I'll box select these nodes and I'll join them together into a frame with Control J. I can select the frame and press F2 to add a label, and I can just call this roughness because these are creating the roughness map. Alright, so the wood looks very smooth right now, but I want to make it look more bumpy. So we're going to add some values into the normal to give it some bump. So first let's go to the add menu and we're going to search for a bump node, and the bump node will allow us to convert color data into bump data. So the first thing that I want to do is add the wood bump strength. So right here, if I control shift and select this dark, super reflective and it looks like it's just going to make the entire thing lighter or darker. So if I turn it way down, you can see it's super reflective and it looks like a polished wood. So that's what we're going to use later in the custom node group. So I'll box select these nodes and I'll join them together into a frame with Control J. I can select the frame and press F2 to add a label, and I can just call this roughness because these are creating the roughness map. Alright, so the wood looks very smooth right now, but I want to make it look more bumpy. So we're going to add some values into the normal to give it some bump. So first let's go to the add menu and we're going to search for a bump node, and the bump node will allow us to convert color data into bump data. So the first thing that I want to do is add the wood bump strength. So right here, if I control shift and select this darken, you can see this is the wood. And so I want to take this darken result, and I'm going to put this into the height value of the bump to convert it to bump data. And then the bump normal, that can go into the normal right here, the principled shader, and I can
Is going on. I can't even plug this in into the bump.
I want to take this darken result, and I'm going to put this into the height value of the bump to convert it to bump data. And then the bump normal, that can go into the normal right here, the principled shader, and I can control shift and select it to preview it. So now you can see it's making the wood look very bumpy. And if I control shift and select the principled shader, now the wood looks very bumpy. Now that is way too strong, so let's just turn the strength way down to just like a 0.2. Also, we can add labels to nodes, so if I select the node and then press F2 to add a label, I can call it wood bump. So wood bump. Now I also want to make the knots more bumpy, so we'll take the wood bump, I'll press Shift-D to duplicate it and let's drop it down here, and the normal can go into the normal. This way we can mix multiple bump maps together. So now what I want to do is go up here to the knots. I want to take this knots linear light here, the result. I'm going to put that down here into the height value. And then also you can see that the wire is overlapping. So if you want to change this, this is totally optional, but you can hold down the shift key and you can right click and drag over the wire, and that's going to add a reroute. And I'll drop the reroute down here and then shift, right click and drag over the wire and let go to add another reroute, and I can drag this up here. And this just kind of makes it look a bit nicer because the wire goes down and then over. So I just like how that looks. Let's also select the wood bump. I'll press F2 to add a label, and I can rename this to knots bump, just to keep things nicely organized. So if I turn the strength up, you can see that is going to make the knots bumpy. Now there is a problem with this. If I turn the strength all the way up to 1, you can see that there's all of this noise here. Now why this is happening is because it's really hard to see, but on this linear light here, there actually is a tiny little bit of noise. You can't really see it, but there's going to be values which are darker and they're lower than 0. So black normally equals 0, but you can actually have negative values. Now, what this clamp result does is this will clamp the values or the colors so that white is going to be fully 1 and black is going to be fully 0. So let me just go back here and Control Shift and select the knots bump. If I go up here to this linear light, and this is in the knots, if I clamp the result, now it's going to take all of the black values and it will turn it to 0. So instead of having negative values, so values lower than 0 to actually see that bump, it's just going to turn it to 0. And so now that'll be fully black there. So that way, by clamping the result, you can just see where the knots are. So let's Control Shift and select the principled shader. Now you can just see the knots there right there, and they're super bumpy. So let's make it much less strong. So here on the strength, on the knots bump, I'm going to turn this down to like a 0.15. And then also, I think that inverting it works better, so I'll hit invert. So instead of the knots looking like they're going out, now they just look like they're going in by inverting it. All right, now the last thing that I want to do is just add a tiny little bit of noise over the entire material. So I'll duplicate the knots bump. Let's plug the normal into the normal here, and I can also turn off the invert. And then what I want to do is just add another noise texture. So I'll go to the add menu. I can search for a noise texture, and we can put the noise texture factor into the height value. And then I also want to make it use the object coordinates. So we're going to take this mapping here. We're going to take the vector. We're going to drag this all the way over here and stick it into the vector of the noise texture. And then also, if you want to add some reroutes here, you can hold down the into the vector of the mapping here. We're going to take the vector, we're going to drag this all the way over here and stick it into the vector of the noise texture. And then also, if you want to add some reroutes here, you can hold down the shift key and right click and drag, hold down the shift key and right click and drag, and you can just drag the reroutes around to keep the wires more organized. So I'm going to bring this reroute over here and then this reroute down here. All right, so let's Control Shift and select the noise texture to preview it. And I want to change some of the settings. So I'll turn the scale to like a 45 so you can see it better. So just change that to a 45. Let's also turn the detail to 15 so it's very detailed. And this roughness here, I'll turn this to like a 0.6 so it's more detailed. So now if I Control Shift and select this knots bump, let's press F2 to rename it. And instead of knots bump, we're going to rename it to noise bump. So now you can see it's just adding a little bit of noise over the entire material. And the strength here, let's turn it to like a 0.1 so it's more subtle. So let's box select all of these nodes here. And I'll press Ctrl J to join them together into a frame. And if you want to like compress them down a little bit, you can. So I might just compress them down a little bit. And then we can select the frame. We can press F2 to add a label, and I can just call this bump. Let's Control Shift and select the principled shader. And now we have a nice wood material with lots of bump. All right, so that is going to be it for the procedural material, but to make this more customizable and easier to use, we're going to be joining it together into a custom node group. So I'm going to click and drag to box select all the nodes. I'll press Control G. Control G will join it together into a node group.
The Wittgenstein is right, I share the care. Sit back, enjoy this life, this starlit sky. I'm content with my place in the universe this time.
However, when you're joining it together into a node group, make sure you don't have the material output selected. So box select all the nodes except the material output and press Ctrl G. Now to go in and out of the node group, you can hit the Tab key. So with the node group selected, just hit Tab to go in and out of the node group. So let's drag the node group way over here, and I can drag it out to make it much bigger. And then also I'll copy the name and I'll paste the name here in the node group, so it is called wood plank. So now we can add up all the custom values to the node group. So I'll hit the Tab key to go into the node group. I'll press the N key to open up the side panel. And you can see if you click on the group tab, there's going to be an interface. And right here on the BSDF, I'm just going to rename this to shader because I like that better. All right, so let's make this a lot bigger so we have more space, and we can now add up all the custom values. So if you go over here to this side, we now have this group input, and we can plug values up to the group input to control those values outside of the node group. So let's first control the scale of the material. So this mapping node is plugged up to all the other textures. So this mapping scale will control the size of the entire material. So we'll put the scale into the extra socket there. And then if I click here on the scale, you can see it's going to be 3 different values because it's a vector, but I want to make it one single value. So let's click on the vector type here, and I can change it to float. Now the texture goes away, and that is because we need to turn the default value to 1. And then if I hit Tab to go out of the node group, we need to turn the scale back to 1. So now we can go. Now the texture goes away, and that is because we need to turn the default value to 1. And then if I hit Tab to go out of the node group, we need to turn the scale back to 1. So now we can go back into the node group, and we can add the colors. So we'll take the group input, and we're going to drag the group input way over here just so we can bring it over here to the base color. And let's plug color A into the extra socket, and then color B, plug that into the extra socket. And then I can just rename these. So you can rename it to wood color or whatever you want. I'm going to call these color 1 and then color 2. Now I also want to control the noise scale. So let's take the group input, and we're going to drag it way back here behind this wood texture, and we have 2 noise textures. So I want to plug the scale of both of them. We're going to plug them here into the group input. So we'll take the first scale, plug that into the extra socket, and the second scale.
Hello. Welcome back.
Plug that into the other group input, and we have 2 input, and we're going to drag it way back here behind this wood texture, and we have 2 noise textures. So I want to plug the scale of both of them. We're going to plug them here into the group input. So we'll take the first scale, plug that into the extra socket, and the second scale, plug that into the extra socket, and then I can double click on them to rename them. So I'll rename this to noise scale 1, and then also the second one here, let's call this noise scale 2. And then I want to control the variation of the texture. So this Voronoi texture here and this one here, these also have scale values, and you can see by changing the scale values, it's really going to make the wood look different. So we'll put this scale into the extra socket, and then this scale here, put that into the extra socket. And then if I double click on this to rename it, I'll rename this to texture variation 1. And then this bottom one here, this one we're going to rename to texture variation 2. So if I go outside of the node group, you can see there they are. So I can drag these around to change the texture variation. Let's go back into the node group. Now these noise textures both have detail values, and I want to be able to control the detail. So let's put the first detail here into the extra socket, and then the second noise texture detail, we're going to put that into the same socket. And by putting them into the same socket, both detail values are going to be controlled by this single value. And I can just rename it, and I'll rename it to noise detail. And then I want to control the Voronoi detail, so you can see these both have detail values, these Voronoi textures. So I'll put the detail into the extra socket, and then this detail here, put it into another extra socket as well. And I'll rename the first one to Voronoi detail 1, and then the second one here, we'll rename this to Voronoi detail 2. Then I also want to be able to control the scale of the knots. So I'll drag the group input right up here, and this Voronoi texture has this scale value. So this will change the size of the knots. So I'll put the scale into the extra socket there, and then I can double click on this and just rename it to like knots scale. Now I also want to be able to control how dark the knots are if you want to see them better. So let's just click on the group input and I'll drag it way over here, and you can see the mix knots in wood. This has a value and we can drag this up and down to make it more visible because this is controlling the brightness. So I'll put the value into the extra socket there, and we'll rename this to knots darkness. And then I want to be able to control the roughness of the shader. So we have this roughness value here, and kind of just like this one, it has a value to make it lighter or darker. So this will control the roughness. So I'll put the value into the extra socket here. I can double click on this and rename it to roughness. And then the last thing that I want to control is all the bump strengths. So we'll drag the group input right down here, and we can now add the bump strengths. So you can just add them in whichever order you want. I guess I'll start down here. So I'll first take the noise bump strength, we'll put that into the extra socket, and then the knots bump strength, put that into the extra socket, and the wood bump strength, put that into the extra socket. And then let's rename all these so that you actually know what they do. So this one is the noise bump strength. This one here is the knots bump strength. And then the last one here, this one is the wood bump strength. All right, so let's click on the group input, and I'm going to drag it way back over here to the very starting, and then I can just hit the tab key to go outside of the node group, and I'll hit the N key to close the side panel. Let's just make this bigger, bring it over here, and I will zoom in here, and we can just review the final material to make sure everything works nicely. So we have the overall scale, and then we have the two different colors. So we have wood color 1 and wood color 2. Then we have the noise scale and the noise scale 2. We have the different texture variations. This is probably the most interesting one to use because it really changes the look of the wood. Then we have the noise detail. We also have the Vorno detail 1 and 2, and this can also really change the look of the wood. Then we also have the knots scale. Then we also have the knots darkness if you want to be able to see the knots better or just get rid of them. We also have the roughness of the material if you want to make the wood look really shiny or really rough. And then we have the noise bump strength. We also have the knots bump strength. And then finally the wood bump strength. Alright, so that is going to wrap it up for this procedural wood plank material. So I hope you enjoyed the tutorial and thank you for watching. And if you'd like to purchase this finished procedural material, you can get that on my Gumroad store and my Patreon page. The links are in the description, and purchasing is a great way to help support this channel. And if you'd like to purchase all
Okay. Why isn't it doing anything? Oh, Starless World 2, save me. We're coming out of the closet.
A dream inside, a dream inside, a dream of meaning lays outside. Who must have
too strong. It's just like the closet, so cold, so cold. Alone, 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 alone. Everything I want. Yeah, that's good. Oh, this should be a spotlight. Oh. Oh shit. Or I don't, should it be a spotlight or should it be a point light? I don't know. Yeah. I saw my sister die. Fuck that, I didn't want her.
What? Do you mean that words are greater yet than that?
As I was lost in the loudness of the universal silence, the thought never left my head. Even if I gave up and closed my eyes, I still wouldn't snap into place. A puzzle piece from a different picture to collect and hang on the wall to remind you that you was born special, that you was born special. But fuck that, we didn't ask to be born.
substance, as mist is. In that case, man is only air as well.
I've been somebody, but I can't quite remember who. I tend to be forgetful at times like this with these sort of things. But does it even matter? Does it even matter if my memory didn't bother leaving a note? I can't recall the name, I can't recall the context, although my heart feels somewhat sober. But does it even matter? Does it even matter? Is there anything special about having a name? I wonder if my existence depends on people around, or am I someone's doll again? La 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 la
Kind of. I like recognize your name, but like I wouldn't be able to tell you anything about our interactions. I'm sorry. Fish with no name. Okay, no worries. This is Blender. Sorry. I'm trying to find him. Oh my god. I do like Vocaloid, if you're referring to me. Yes, that is my shirt. Dream inside a dream inside a dream. Let's add a light. With my universe. Oh, the song name is always credited beneath me. This is Coming Out of the Closet by Snippets of You from the Shimeji Simulation, the musical album. Yeah, it's right here. Please support the musician because the musician is so cool. No one came yet? I'm sorry. I hope that changes. 0. Probably true. I'm starting to use a web browser site called Spline, and it's for 2D animation and modeling. I'm using it because one of those complex is fun. I mean, I would recommend using Blender because it's free and like it is complex, but you can also just ignore the complexity of it and just work on whatever simple stuff you want to work on. It's like I don't have the file anymore, I think. But I've made some really like impressive looking stuff with literally just messing with the cube, the default cube that you get when you spawn in. So, like, you don't have to learn any hotkeys. There are tutorials that don't use any hotkeys, and if you want, you can just learn the hotkeys so that you can like follow most of the tutorials, um, with a lot of pausing, of course. Um, Too lazy to get on the computer. Oh, that's okay. Well then, yeah, I guess whatever suits your boat or whatever. Oh, this is Monica from Doki Doki Literature Club. There we go. That's so cool. Yes, I am making a plan. That's exactly what I'm making. So I'm glad I came across that. Um, just Monica, just yeah. You're funny. The guppies are swimming. Oh, I did not mean to start the beginning of the song. I dreamed inside a dream, dreaming lines inside. You must have dreamed it. Random Encounters was the goats, bro. What is Is that the musician who made Hello? Ah, I'm content with my place in the universe this time. Oh, okay. Cool. Thank you for letting me know. Can I see the cat? Yeah, the cat's actually in my room this time. So let me just show him off, I guess. Hi, kitty. I'm sorry for waking you. So this is my cat. What fish do you have? I can't really see. Oh, they're guppies. Uh, the species is guppies, female and male guppies. Maybe like a zebra guppy, I think. But yeah, this is my cat. Hi. I think he's sleepy, so I'm gonna put him back. I think it's a Russian blue breed. I don't. Hi, hey Palace. Um, I don't know exactly, but it's like gray and like yellow eyes, so probably. Okay, this is looking pretty solid. Yeah, your first customer. That's great. How did it go? I don't know why, but whenever I see a cat or a dog, I just immediately ask what type it is. That's okay. You don't have to know why, because it's a pretty. I like that you ask. Like, it's a good question to ask. Okay. I think I might. Well, wait. Maybe I can go to the house. Well, the house as a template, like way too big. Like a house. Okay, if we check the manga, this side, they're nice but cursed a bit. Oh, I'm sorry. The house, yeah, the house is only like however many meters tall. Oh, thank you for let me open your channel here, Palace. Um, hang on. I will use this tab and Palace. Now just go to your most recent video. Oh. Yo, I'll give you a name for your planet. Blobnet, like Blobbing Planet. Oh. I like it actually. I do like it. Thank you. This is like super ambient. Or maybe not ambient, but like the ambience of like the tone is like super strong here, Alice. I really like it. I want to make something like this. Anyway. Very cool. Uh, you know, I would compose music, but I'm trash. Well, the only way you can not be trash is to get better. You have to practice the medium in which you want to learn in order to improve at it, right? So you should try anyway, even if it does look like or hear like trash or wait, hear like sound like trash, yes. Because I can't really reassure you because I haven't heard your music, so okay. But I think I'm gonna end stream because it's been like 3 hours. So I appreciate everyone for stopping by and watching me make my planet named Blobnet, apparently. Thank you all for stopping by, and I appreciate your time.